Hello, everyone. Welcome to kind of impromptu edition of Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am Greg Flammang, joined as always by Jamie Uyeyama. And Jamie, roller coaster morning today.
Extremely roller coaster.
It was it was reported. Avery Davis had left practice early yesterday. No one really knew how big a deal it was, or if it was a big deal at all. Deion Colsey was seen with a brace on his knee pre-practice, and that's not good news, obviously. And so then it drops this morning that Avery Davis has torn his ACL for the second time. It was the right ACL, it was the opposite ACL from the his injury last year. But before we get into anything else, I mean, there's no words to really describe like how awful it is for Avery Davis. I mean, he was a couple games away from finishing out his Notre Dame career and moving on to the NFL, and he tears his ACL against Navy on like a nothing play, and it's like the game's basically
He was
over.
blocking. It wasn't even
It
wasn't even running around.
like not just standing around, but like it wasn't really engaged in the play.
Yeah, not like a hard cut. Yeah.
And the unfortunate part too is like on the play, Kyron scores to seal it, and he would have been done after that. So comes back this year, and he's a former captain, so he's probably going to be in line to be a captain again. And 7 practices, and he tears the ACL. It's awful. It's as bad as you can imagine for any player. Just your reaction to that, just how you feel for Avery Davis.
I mean, just sick to my stomach. You just feel for him. And obviously there's other Notre Dame factors that we'll get into, but you don't even think about that because you're just thinking about him and as an individual and kind of like how heartbreaking it is for him. And what's really, really terrible is obviously the guy worked so hard to come back, and they weren't like overusing him because they were trying to they try to manage his load. But that is kind of like how that's what happens typically when someone tears the ACL. It's not the same one, it's the other one because it's of the load you're putting on it. And you just feel just absolutely sick for him and just what that means. Like, I mean, who knows what the future will hold for him. Technically, I guess he could try to apply to come back. I think he still could if he really wanted to, or if he'll still fight. I mean, obviously a guy like Sean Crawford, he went through something similar. At least he's got people like that. Drew Tranquil was someone who had multiple things. So at least maybe he has someone to kind of like lean on and talk to about that kind of stuff. But I just can't imagine what's going through his head right now. You just feel sick for him.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate on what he could do. You're right. Maybe you're right.
I mean, who knows? I mean, really, like we have no idea.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure it's not even. I'm not even thinking about it right now.
Yeah. So it's tough. And the thing about it too is like every player, right? Any athlete in any sport, and anyone who's watching this who's been playing sports, like everyone understands. Like you work so hard to get your body ready to go. And the thing with these injuries is it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much time you put in or any of those things. It's just not up to you. There's nothing he can do to prevent himself really from an injury like this.
Yeah.
And that's what sucks about it, is that you can't do anything. And the worst and the hardest injuries, the ones that take the longest to recover from, they're the ones where you can't prepare for them. It happens to the most fit people. You take care of your body, do all these things, and then you take a step and that's it. It's over. So it's just terrible. Feel for Avery Davis. Again, like Joey Tonone, like he'll be around the team. And I think being around the team will be good for him. It's always good to be around the guys, and maybe he'll still get named captain. Like who knows, right? Like he maybe can have that distinction. So So, prayers to him and all those things. And we're rooting for him. And if it happens that he can come back and, be a Notre Dame player or be a GA or something, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, you just hope that whatever that he can. I just mentally, it's just got to be just crushing. That's the hardest thing.
The other bit of news that drops today, which is big news, even if it was kind of expected, is Tyler Buchner is named the Notre Dame starting quarterback. I think everybody kind of expected that going into the season, and or going into even the off season. And what is your reaction? I mean, are you surprised they announced it today? I mean, there's kind of the thought that, okay, like we have bad news with Avery Davis, so we're going to kind of perk up the program and get some positive vibes going with naming Tyler Buchner. I mean, it's not that I don't think they would have done it anyway, but the fact that it was today.
I think it's probably just coincidental, and unfortunately, and it's unfortunate because it becomes like bittersweet for the team, because obviously I'm sure there's a bunch of guys that are excited for Tyler, and excited about that, but when one of your leaders gets hurt, and a guy like obviously that Tommy Rees just talked about and was how valuable he is to the program, and like as one of the best program guys he's been around, that makes it a lot more bitter. But I think it's probably just coincidental that it was just going to happen. Like I think we all assumed that way. To me, it's more like validation that Buchner has probably shown everything that they needed to show. Because if I think if you didn't hear anything until like Ohio State week, that probably meant Buchner wasn't having a good camp. So this is the way that I think everyone knew it was headed this way. And as much as it sucks for obviously a Drew Pine, who still like was trying to compete there, and they'll like reset, they'll still need him. But I think this is was the inevitable thing to happen. I think it's great because it gives them to kind of like to really like dive in and say like, here's like not all of the reps obviously, but a lot of the reps, and they're going to shape the offense around him. And I think that was the way it was going to go anyways. The quicker they can do that, the better it is. And also too, especially, as we can kind of get into like some of the stuff that you're going to do with 12 and 21 personnel and all that suits Buchner more, right? And what they kind of showed with Buchner last year and all that. So I think it's and that part is obviously coincidental with the Avery Davis injury, but it does kind of fit into that.
Yeah. And like, obviously I had no doubt that it was going to be Buchner. Like I posted a season expectations video for Buchner over the week that I encourage everyone to check out, because it's obviously very topical at this moment. So it's on our YouTube page, but I guess we can talk about what the Davis loss means for the offense and where we think we're going to go. Obviously, anytime like receiver was already depleted going into it, even if everyone stayed healthy, didn't have a lot of numbers, and so then you lose Avery Davis, and people are always going to speculate, okay, who's moving, right? And Marcus Freeman mentioned maybe a safety as an option. And obviously everyone's mind goes to Xavier Watts at that point, because he was a wide receiver. But then he mentioned Xavier Watts was having a great camp at safety. So you don't know what that means. I think offline we were kind of speculating maybe that could mean Jaden Bellamy, who played wide receiver at in high school. And the reason I think Bellamy could be an option is because at some point you're going to need a body in there, and you're not going to go to defense and find Avery Davis, like what Avery Davis is going to be this year, right? As far as like jet sweeps and with the screen game.
No, you're not gonna. There's not gonna be a 1-for-1. No, it's
not. Yeah, like you're not gonna find him, right? Like Avery Davis, when he made the move, he wasn't his current of what he is, right? So like you're not going to go and find that, right? So you're talking about like you have your receivers who you want to play. It's like who can be like you're looking for someone who is like the sixth guy, right? Who's going to take reps. You don't want that to be someone like Xavier Watts because he can play for you.
Yeah.
He can play for you at safety. So you would think someone like Jaden Bellamy, who is a developmental guy anyway. So you could say to him, like, look, you're a ball player, right? This year, we need you to rep at wide receiver in the event that we need you to go out there and play. He can still play special teams, right? Like he can still, because that's what he's going to be anyway. So you can, it's not like he's giving up his career on defense. He's not going to play a role for the defense this year anyway. So it's like, okay, you can help the team on offense. You can still take reps on special teams and that sort of thing. You can get on the field that way. That's why, to me, it makes more sense to move someone like Bellamy than someone like Watts, who isn't like he doesn't have a similar skill set to Davis anyway. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know. What do you think about that? Well, like just the whole situation.
Well, one, I think it is more about getting a body than getting a guy that you think is going to play a lot this year. Because, like exactly what you said, it's not going to be a replacement. And we'll talk about kind of like what replacing him will mean a little bit later. But like, I think with Watts, the first thing to think of is Watts, and it's not just that the fact that he's having a good camp, but it's like, you don't want to be the guy, like for a player, as much as like everyone's like, well, he's got to do it. This is what you're supposed to do. It's like, I mean, he might just be getting comfortable at safety. And then all of a sudden he's having a good camp. And then they're like, we need you to move it. Like it's kind of mentally crushing for him. And it also could be like the thing if like, you're going to move me here, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Like that could be like a catalyst for it. So I don't think it's a slam dunk anyway. I'm not saying that maybe they wouldn't even ask him, but he might have zero interest and they would have to ask him. It's not like they're like, you're moving to receiver. Like, because he already made that move. He was the one who initiated and said, I want to try a defense last year. So there's a lot that goes into that. So yeah, it makes a lot more sense for a guy like Bellamy if they want to, if he's open to it, I think. But then the other thing is too, is they might think if it really is just getting a body, you have to look at like a guy like Chance Tucker, who obviously didn't play. He played receiver in high school and then switched to corner later on. And he was like a guy who went late in his high school career to corner. Right. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons he was kind of like a sleeper kind of guy. So depending on where you're looking at with him, if he's not in the mix at corner and you're thinking that, oh, Bellamy, I think this is going to be a guy who has a chance to play and whatever and be something at this position, and we're only going to move him for a year anyways, then you look at maybe a guy like Chance Tucker too, right? And that could be it. But I don't think it's like a slam dunk that anyone is definitely moving. They'll have to like kind of play it out. Because the other way to look at it is, so that 2020 season that people just forget, like those 2 years ago, the receiver position was like actually much worse than it is now for Notre Dame, where they had Javon McKinley, who was a fifth-year senior, who like basically only had been like a garbage time guy in heading into the thing. They got a transfer in Ben Skoranek, who was somewhat productive, but not a big numbers guy at Northwestern. They had Avery Davis, who had bounced from a million positions, whatever, and there. Those are the top three receivers, right? Kevin Austin hurt, right? He had the foot injury that year. Braden Lindsey, hamstring, bugged him the whole year, never really got going. Joe Wilkins, he wasn't like ready to play at whatever level they wanted him to play at. And none of the freshmen, Jordan Johnson, obviously everybody knows what happened with him. Jay Brunel, he was a 1 year and out guy. And then X Watts was the other guy. So like, that was like, and Lawrence Keys was the other thing, and they didn't even play him, right? They didn't even really play him. So that was like a really,
they had bodies that they didn't want to use.
They had bodies they didn't even want to use. And now you have guys that you think that can play and help you. And obviously you're still going to need more. And then I think also there's just more depth and a little bit more versatility with running backs and all that too. But that 2020 year, McKinley had 42 catches. Michael Mayer had 42 catches. And the next highest receiver was Kyron Williams, right? People forget Ben Skoranek. He was hurt for some of that year too, because he had a hamstring thing too. He only had 29 catches that year. So even though he was good with those 29 catches and contributed and was, a really good blocker and all that too, it wasn't like he had this monster year, right? So I think there's still it's not totally dire. Like it can get bad. They still want to have another body there just in case and there's another injury. And obviously, Colsey that Freeman mentioned today is coming off a PCL, but they expect him back soon. Really good news on the Joe Wilkins front, where they said that he thinks he's going to be ready. He's ahead of schedule. They think he's going to be ready for Ohio State. So that's like a really, really positive thing. So it's not going to be as horrible as it might sound there, at receiver. So I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk, although I think it would be good if they could add one more body.
Yeah. I'm just going to highlight Travis Denny with the proper energy, I think. I mean, you guys rock. That's always good. Nice message. Davis news, terrible. Buchner news, awesome. Big things coming. O-line for real, and our defense going to be nasty. Travis Denny, not on rock bottom.
See the bright side. Love it.
That's the energy we want. Let's talk about what we think this means schematically for Notre Dame. Because here's the thing that I look at, right? Who, like, I look in terms of, like, they always talk about best 11, right? So, like, to me, Avery Davis, the thing about losing Avery Davis is that he can play all three wide receiver spots, for one. Okay, the other part is, like, jet sweeps, bubble screens. Like, that's going to be his game, right? So there's a lot of things that you lose there, just in terms of versatility. Formation versatility, too, right? So, but then you start, like, okay, you take Davis out of the equation then, and it's like, there's the other part about moving a player. Would you rather, like, take Bellamy, let's say, or Xavier Watts, and would you rather play them? Or would you say, okay, maybe we need to get Eli Raridan on the field more, or Alex Bauman, or Kane Barong, right? Like, these are offensive players that you recruited to be offensive players. Like, you emphasize those guys. Or it's like, okay, maybe we do 21 personnel a lot more now and get more Audric Estimate and more Logan Diggs and more Chris Tyree. You have two wide receivers out there with Michael Mayer, right? Like, to me, that is, instead of, like, okay, people keep counting, like, the wide receiver numbers, which understandable, right? Like, it's not that you shouldn't. That's fine to do. But it's you have all of your skill position players at your disposal to do things. So, like, how do you use all of your skill position players? That's how you create offense, especially now that Tyler Buchner has been made into the starter. Like, he is a skill position player a lot more in the sense that, like, Drew Pine would be, because he doesn't have the legs and he doesn't have the running ability, right? So to me, I think people focus too much on the wide receiver numbers and don't look at what the offense is and what they have at their disposal as a whole, right? So to me, you're talking, like, more 21 personnel, and we put out a video about that. We might have to do another one now because Avery Davis is out, and things are changing. But we like, over the off season, like, this was in, like, April or something, we put out a 21 personnel video with videos and all those things, and I recommend everyone kind of checks that out on Irish Sports Daily. But what I guess how do you see them moving forward? Like, more 21, more 12, like empty sets with Buchner back there by himself. You flex out like a running back. Like, how do you see this making, like, where do you see this making the impact, scheme wise, formation wise?
I think, and I tweeted it out right after too, that I think they already were going to be a heavy 12 personnel team, right? Yeah. I think that was a given no matter what. Because not just because of, like, the situation at wide receiver, because of the talent at tight end, right? So I think that was obvious that they're going to do that. So I think they're going to go heavy 12. I think you're going to see more 21, especially because, you're getting good vibes with Diggs being back healthier. I mean, obviously this would have been JD Price. If he was healthy, this would have been huge for him. He would have had a lot more opportunity there as a receiver, I think. But then you hear Jabron Payne, you hear some of the positive things with him too.
Yeah.
He's a guy who can catch the ball pretty well too. So that might be something that you look into. But I think there's a lot of stuff that they can do with it. So one thing you have to remember, so, Westwood Manor Films here, who's in the comment section, he said, who's your first choice for slot now? And here's the thing, what they can do with that, really, like if they're playing like standard 11 personnel, then Lorenzo Styles is in the slot.
Yeah.
And Braden Lenzy is, to the field. And then you have Merriweather, Colsey, Thomas to the boundary, whoever, right? Like Wilkins, whatever, right? Like, so that's kind of like how you look at it. And obviously, like Styles played in the slot last year and was good. And also too, and we're, speaking of, he's not a small guy. That's another one of those like big slot type guys.
Lorenzo Styles destroyed Oklahoma State out of the slot.
Yes.
He was working out of the slot.
Yeah, obviously Davis wasn't available for that game. He was great in that game. So you still have a guy who could be an elite player out of the slot there. The other thing is you got Michael friggin' Mayer in the slot. 49% of the time, according to PFF, last year lined up in the slot on passing downs. So, I mean, I'm going to guess 50% of the time this year too, he's going to be lining up in the slot on passing downs. Like that's just an automatic. That's a place he can win. If you really want to do that, you can put him on the boundary. You can play him on the boundary and play more of that. A little bit like Tyler Eifert, what they did in 2012, right? Where they played him a bit more on the boundary because they didn't have that Michael Floyd there that they can put there. So that's another thing too, right? You also have, like you said, you have a big guy like Eli Raritan, right? They're talking about hyping up Raritan and Stays, right? You have those guys that you can play a little bit more. Kane Barong is basically a big slot. That's what he is. Like he's not a traditional tight end. He's not an inline guy. That's the thing. It's not like Notre Dame has recruited only inline guys. They don't have that, right? They have all these guys who are very versatile. And Kane Barong is like a very much an H back. He's not a traditional Y tight end. He's very much an H back, big slot type guy. So that's another option there, right? So you have all that. Tyree can play in the slot. He can do some of that too. Really, if you think about it, and I'm not saying it's, we mentioned it is a huge loss for many reasons why it's a big loss of personnel wise. But if you were going to lose somebody, it would have been a slot was probably the best situation for Notre Dame.
Because there's so many other ways to get production.
To replace that. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because so it's like the old Moneyball quote, right? You replace him in the aggregate, right? So like you can't. So Avery Davis can run bubble, he can run jets, and he's the other part too.
Styles can do that, right? That's someone like Styles. You see probably
that. But if you want,
Lenzy can do that.
Lenzy can do that. You can have that. Those are things that Tyree can do, like the shorter stuff.
Exactly.
Right. So that's what he can do. The shorter things. The other part too is Avery Davis is one of the best route runners on the team, right? Which is to say that he's the guy against Purdue who hit the post corner and got over the top of the defense, scored a touchdown, right? Same thing against Clemson last year. Ran like some really good routes and that sort of thing. If you're going to have him do that, that's when you put Styles in the slot, or that's when you put Jaden Thomas in the slot. You replace that type of production with other players. And if you want to do the bubbles and you want to do those other things, then it can be Tyree, or it can be Styles then too, or it can be Lenzy or something like that, right? You don't have to. It's not like it's not the slot like you think of like the Robbie Toma type slot or the Chris Fink type slot, right? Where it's like it's got to be the one thing. You can always put other players inside in the slot, right? Like that's what I said. It's utilizing the totality of your offensive skill players, not just counting the receiver room, right? So that's where I think Notre Dame is well equipped. Then it's bad because that Avery Davis can do all of those things, and so the other part with not having him is that you're always disguising what you're gonna do when you have him out there. right? Because like he can play any wide receiver position. That's what you can't replace, right? And that's what is just unfortunate. There.
I think sorry to interrupt you, Greg, but like I think the big thing that you can't replace with him is so Mayer is a guy who can win on third down, right? If he gets a one-on-one on third down, like you're gonna throw the ball to Michael Mayer most of the time, right? Like that's a matchup you're looking for. But as you saw, like in that Oklahoma State game, and I imagine this Ohio State game, they're gonna bracket Mayer a lot. It's third down, it's third and 6. Well, guess who's they're going to make it extremely difficult to get the ball to? Michael Mayer. They're going to try to double him as much as possible, right? So with that, that's where you have say, well, Avery Davis is a guy we think can win a one-on-one, right? And so now Styles has to be that dude who wins there, right? Like a guy like him has to be that dude who wins those on third down. Whether it's before they used to have Kyron Williams could do that. They would do that. And he was a great guy for that too. Now, Tyree, Dig, whoever has to be that guy. Right. So that's what you kind of miss. And it's just that whoever needs to be that guy needs to, even if hopefully it's 2 or 3 guys, they need to step up with that because when it matters, when it comes to moving the chains, that Davis was a guy that could win, be reliable. And even when he first moved to receiver, he was just a guy who like made a lot of plays in moments, right? He was a for the moment guy. So other guys got to show that they're for the moment.
And that's the thing, because when it comes to cases, you need guys on the team, period, who have done it. Okay. Avery Davis has done it, right? I posted the clip from the Clemson game today. Like that is one of the biggest plays in Notre Dame's biggest win in decades, right? So like when you do that, like that's who, like every team needs, like there's a guy on our team who is not only like has done it and has proved it, but for him, he's taking accountability because he is a captain and is like, this is my team. I'm going to make the play. And everyone knows we can count on Avery Davis to make the play for us because he's done it before. And now you don't have that. And you can't, there's no getting it, right? There's no replacing that. Now, it has to be someone else, right? But it's just, you always need those guys on every team who everyone can count on. And that's the part where you just don't know it, like where you're going to find it. And that leads to a little bit of uncertainty. So I don't know. Quick video here. Any final thoughts on the situation on the day and everything?
Yeah, like I think we have to wait and see what happens in terms of moving guys. So obviously I see the comments. Xavier Watts has to move. He does not have to move. Right. He does not have to move. And the other thing is him moving largely depends on how Notre Dame views him as not just for this year, but for next year. Because if they think he's having a great camp and they're like, well, I mean, this guy's going to play for us at safety. Well, we've talked about it in other previous times. Notre Dame's probably going to lose 3 safeties after this year. So he might start at safety next year. Right. So if if you think he's going to be a starter at safety next year and play this year at safety, then you can't move him because then you're in a really, really bad spot. And you already know that, like, who knows what's going on with Peyton Bowen and whatever, right? So you might not have a guy who can come in and play right away. So you have to think of, there's a lot more that goes into it than just, this is the move. That's not as simple. And then the other thing is, what else did I want to say? No, that's about it. I just think, okay. I just think that we just got to wait and see there. But I think, I'm interested to kind of see what they can do there. And I think you just want to see, you feel sick for Avery Davis. It's a big opportunity for some other guys, and you hope some guys step up.
Yeah, and just to the point you just made, Notre Dame needs to figure out how to make the offense good, not how to fill out the receiver room. You know, like that shit's over. Like they can't. Like you can't bring in Avery Davis. There is no more portal. There is no more of that. Like they're not gonna find a proven, effective player to come in and replace him. So they need to figure out with what they have how to make the offense good. Okay, and if they think that means Xavier Watts, then great. But I'm not sure that that's where it is right now, and that's why they didn't make a move today. If they knew that would make the team better, they would make that move. So that's how I think about it. Michael Marshall said a super chat, so he has a question. What's the number needs to hold OSU win now? I know the answer. Because my friend Brendan McElhennon has been researching this for like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Less than 30. Travis Denny put it. If Ohio State scores over 30, they haven't lost since like 1990. So it's got to be below 30. 29.9 points is the answer.
That's when they lost last year, both those games, right? So
they scored 27 and 28.
And, as much as you think that, because if Notre Dame gets into, if you get into a shootout with them, they're going to lose. Like, you're not going to.
That's how OSU wins.
That's how they win. That's how they beat Utah, right? So really, like, that's the defense really has to, and it's going to be like they're going to get yards and all that. I mean, everyone knows they are. It's red zone. It's third down. It's that kind of stuff. So
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in today. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you heard today. There's going to be more analysis on everything going forward. This was an impromptu show, so we appreciate everyone for tuning in on short notice like that. Hit the like button if you like the video and everything like that. We'll be back next week with a whole bunch of other things, talking a lot about this probably. I'll probably be doing some some previews and expectations on wide receivers and that sort of thing. So you're going to want to look out for that. And thank you everyone again. And have a